So I'm going to read you a story today. This is a story from my childhood. Back in the day when I was a child, we had no computers. We had no internet. We had to rely on books. And this is one of my favorite books. And I remember my grandmother reading me this book. And she's dead. She died. Whatever. But anyway, this is one of my favorite books. It's called Dirty Feet. And I'll read it to you, shall I? Penelope had... This is a teacher skill that you may not know, that teachers can read backwards and upside down. And that's backwards. So I'm just going to read it. Penelope had 3 pairs of shoes. They were the brown and white sandal shoes, and the black ones she wore for dress up. But the shoes she liked the best were the bright green sneakers with orange racing stripes. There's a picture there. She wore them to the park. She wore them when she visited her friends. And she wore them to school every day. The trouble was, Penelope, that's her name, was growing out of her favorite shoes. One morning, she's getting big. They're not fitting. This is the next picture. Enjoy. One morning, the sneakers felt even tighter than usual. But Penelope squeezed them on anyway and dashed out the door to school. It had rained during the night. Puddles were everywhere. Penelope was careful not to step in any. The more she walked, the tighter the sneakers felt. Finally, she couldn't stand them anymore. She had to take them off. She undid the laces and slipped her feet out. Whew, what a relief! She looks relieved, doesn't she? Well, wouldn't you? Suddenly, a breeze came up and blew off her hat. She left her sneakers and ran after it. The hat landed in the middle of a big mud puddle. Penelope had no choice. She waded in and pulled it out. The mud felt cool and squishy. Did it go? Did it go? Just then, the school bell rang. Penelope ran to get her sneakers. They were gone. Gone! It was too late to go home. Her mother would be so angry. As they should be. But how could she show up at school without shoes? Her teacher would be angry. And as a teacher, I can tell you right now, I would be angry. And worst of all, her favorite shoes were lost. Penelope was worried, as she should be. Look, she's barefoot I'm saying New York. Do you want to be barefoot in New York? No, you do not. I'm just saying. I live in London, I'm just saying. She walked through more puddles without noticing them. She walked through a pile of garbage. That would be rubbish in English. Somebody had dumped. And through little piles of dirt left by the street cleaner. Look, she's happy. She has shoes. Oh, what was that? Not happy. No shoes. Just saying. Before she knew it, she was at school. Everyone pointed and giggled. That's a giggle. Even her friends, Brenda and Tim. can I just show you? Nothing ever came good of Brenda. I'm just saying. She works in accounting. Just saying. Penelope kept her head high and marched into her classroom. Look at her. She's marching. She's owning it. She knows her feet are dirty. So dirty. Seriously, never do this, children. My goodness, Penelope, said Mrs. James, her teacher. Where are your shoes and why are your feet so dirty? Penelope didn't know what to say. Would Mrs. James understand about tight shoes and mud puddles? Probably not. Penelope, said Mrs. James, go wash your feet, and then we'll try to find someone to put them in. Look, the shame. Dirty feet. Look at Mrs. James. No one's to judge, because look at that. And look at the children. Can we just say this is peak 1970s children's books? Look at the pointing. Look at the bell bottoms. Look at the shoes. And we continue. Washing feet was fun. Until Penelope saw there were no paper towels to dry them in. She tried to shake her feet dry. Imagine that. I don't know. But that didn't work. So there she is, washing her feet. So unhygienic. And there she is, shaking her feet. Penelope is dirty. I'm just saying. Dirty feet again, said Mrs. James. And dirty footprints in the hall? Didn't you dry your feet after you washed them? Couldn't, said Penelope. No towels. In this day and age, there's no sanitary products. I'm just saying. 1978, this preceded it. My goodness, tell Mr. Whitlock to bring towels and a mop. Then wash your feet again and dry them. And keep looking for some shoes. Because everyone has shoes just like, stacked in their backpack. I'm not one to judge. I'm just saying. Oh, no. Okay, so I read ahead and saw Mr. Whitlock. So there's Judgy. There's Penelope with dirty feet. And now I'm going to show you Mr. Whitlock before I read this bit. Because seriously, child protection. That should not be working in a school. Just saying. Mr. Whitlock was in the basement. The stairs were dark. The floor was dirty. Penelope walked on her toes like a ballerina. She ain't no ballerina. Mr. Whitlock was even dirtier than the floor. I don't have any trouble believing that he's dirtier than the floor. He had been fixing the furnace. Penelope delivered her message. Mr. Whitlock, I can honestly not even say his name because it's just... Mr. Whitlock got his mop and set up upstairs. Penelope tripped on the first step, fell on a pile of greasy rags, and wound up dirty head to toe. Not as dirty as Mr. Whitlock. Just saying. Mrs. James shook her head. My goodness, you just get dirtier and dirtier. See if the lost and found box has some shoes. I couldn't find any. Then wash out the best you can and come back to class. Not one to judge. Just saying. Just saying. Seriously, just Mr. Whitlock. Avoid Mr. Whitlock. The lost and found box was in the waiting room outside the principal's office. The painter had painted half the floor. He'd gone out and forgotten to leave a sign saying wet paint. Because normal people wouldn't see paint and be like, oh, maybe it's wet. But this is Penelope. It's 1978. We're not judging. So Penelope didn't notice the paint until her feet started to feel wet and sticky. There's no comment there to be had because, frankly, Penelope. Oh boy, she thought, this is it for sure. Just then, Mrs. Price, the principal, appeared in the doorway. There she is, not acknowledging the fact that her feet are sticky and wet. There's judgy principal, head teacher. Yeah. She looked at Penelope. And Penelope looked at her. And the two of them broke out laughing. Because wet feet is always funny. Well, Penelope, Mrs. Price said finally, Mrs. James told me you were coming, but I guess I didn't get here soon enough. Yeah, and you hired someone who didn't paint the floor properly. I'm not just saying, but there's government cuts, and there's times of need. Let's get you cleaned up, and then we'll look in the lost and found box. Now, this looks like a happy woman who makes a lot of money and is still confident enough to show her legs. This looks like somebody snapping away. Well, Penelope, and I'm not saying she's not very smart, because I am saying she's not very smart. I'm just gonna put it out there. She's standing in wet paint. Really? Really? That's where you want to go? Anyway, continuing with the story. All Penelope and Mrs. Price found were a Batman cape, trademark there, a hair barrette, don't judge me, and a dried up peanut butter sandwich. I'd eat that. Like, I'd have no problem eating that at all. So, Mrs. Price said, I'll give you an old pair of shoes that I keep here for bad weather. This is athlete's foot and how it spreads. We'll stuff them with paper towels. Once again, we have no paper towels in this life we're living now. Then we'll get you home for lunch. Put your own shoes on and bring these back this afternoon. Again, 1970s. So there she is. There she is, barefoot. I don't want to get into this because child protection, it's just wrong. You don't do it. Back in class, there was more laughter. Do you know when people laugh at you when you're in class? It's because they're jealous. Is that what kids do these days? I don't know. I don't know. Even Penelope joined in. She had to meet. Her feet looked silly. Just you wait. So there are the laughing kids. I don't know why this one with the knee-high pink socks is laughing at anyone, because lovers. But yeah, you can see she's obviously dragging it up, but it's not nice. I think Mrs. James did something wrong. On the way home, Penelope walked as quickly as she could in Mrs. Price's shoes. She should be, because they're like early tube. She stayed very far away from mud puddles. When she reached her house, the postman was there too. Just wait until you see the postman. He pulled her sneakers out of his truck. I knew these were yours, he said. A dog left them under a tree. Just take a moment to process that. So there she is, wearing badly fitting shoes. There's Scary Postman, and the dog left them under the tree. I don't agree with that. Penelope thanked the postman, dodgy, and put on her sneakers and carried Mrs. Price's shoes into the house. Her mother was there waiting. Now, I don't know, your mother would be waiting for you to not have any shoes on, go to school with no shoes. My mother would have beaten me with a wooden spoon or a belt. Those are the options, wooden spoon or belt. They're always the options. Why are you so dirty, she said. And why are you carrying those old shoes? Those are Mrs. Price's shoes. I think the mom is being judgy. It's a long story, said Penelope. I'll tell you during lunch. All right, said her mother. But first, I have a surprise for you. It's going to be the wooden spoon or the belt. What do you think it's going to be? Because there she is, putting on her old shoes and totally disregarding the fact that Mrs. Price gave her shoes, leaving them on the doorstep. I'm not here to judge. Look at the mom. She obviously loves the infant better. Keep reading. It was a new pair of sneakers. Exactly like her old ones, except they fit. So I hope you enjoyed Dirty Feet. It's backwards here. I know. I don't know how to do this. Anyway, Dirty Feet by Stephen Kroll. Kind of like the soundtrack of my youth. Anyway, hope you're all doing well.